I suppose most people would not have heard of the Hasmonean Dynasty, not being Jewish. But it is important because Gentiles need to learn from the mistakes of Jews. I think it is a mistake to consider Jews to be to be in possession of superhuman cunning. I mean, it is clear from the stories that you get from the Old Testament that they made terrible errors and are still regretting them. And a lot of these errors are being currently repeated by us. I wonder if that was what Marx, who was descended from a long line of rabbis, was thinking about when he said, history enacts itself in tragedy and repeats itself as farce. He meant that people don't really learn the lessons of history because they don't understand it or they aren't taught it properly, which is more often the case. After all, history is inevitably politicized and always written by the victor. Many people find history dull, full of facts and battles. But history is mainly understood as stories, as anyone who has read the Bible would know. A lot of stories have a moral, and we would know of Aesop's fables, which are very simple stories that have a moral, and also children like stories, and so do adults who don't particularly like arguing over the meaning of words. They like stories too, which is why soaps are so popular with women especially. Women and children like stories, and men, well, most of them are more interested in the rules and how it works for them. And I'm trying to explain how rules would work for men if only they would respect it a little bit more. Imagine a world without rules. Well, there would be a breakdown of law and order, as is happening right now across the West, making our futures uncertain, our present almost insufferable because of the doubt and anxiety that we feel, because our ruling classes are no longer constrained by rules. Not even the most important ones of being logical, even if they are evil, and you can't be logical if what we rely on is not true. So in order to be irrational, the conclusion that we reach must be based on some undisputed fact. And obviously what we think is logical is in fact logical and rational and not irrational. So what is the significance of the Hasmoneans? It is to do with separation of powers. So there was this question of a king or a priest who became king, and this is not allowed according to the Torah. Because according to the Torah, kingship should always rest in the bride of the Yehuda, descendants of Jacob's son Judah, as it did once David's line was established. It was to be separated from the priesthood, which came out of the tribe of Levi, from which Aaron descended, to balance the secular and spiritual. Anyway, those Jews, they broke that rule and their kingdom crumbled, and they fought each other, and they were corrupt and bloodthirsty, and when they couldn't make up their minds about who is to be king, they asked the Romans to settle their dispute for them, and guess what they did? They took over. So really, I think it is a common mistake by Gentiles to suppose Jews to be more intelligent than they are. There are plenty of, a good example of how Jews are not that clever is that a higher percentage of them support the Democrats than the Gentile American population that make up the total of American voters. Do the Democrats have it in the bag? I don't think so. American politics is currently very wobbly. The latest thing to destabilize it is the suggestion that one of the judges in the Supreme Court will go against Roe and Wade. And this is obviously not official, it's only a draft judgment, but the leaking of it is obviously designed to intimidate the judges into not going against Roe and Wade. And if you think through these things properly, you should understand that this isn't really about Jews, it's really about the people who want sexual liberation from the rules of marriage and good parenting, and those who want to remain socially conservative and marry before having children and stay together for the sake of the children. And this would mean a society that is a patriarchy, that is more likely to have leaders more likely to support the national interest. That would be people like Trump and Trump supporters who are social conservatives, who don't quite agree with gay marriage and transgenderism, but are perhaps now too intimidated to say anything much. But these matters that you consider peripheral are not really peripheral, they are fundamental to your ability to remain in existence as a group. So the danger of saying, it doesn't matter about sexual morality, it doesn't matter about the pill, about feminism, about unisex toilets, and now you know it does, profoundly, deeply, fundamentally. Because if you confuse your gender roles, you become less efficient. If you actually confuse the sexes, you become sterile. And therefore you will become unable to have children, whether legitimate or not, to keep your group in existence and apart from others. And now, in the West, we have the additional problem of our ruling class as being mad and evil. They're not even doing what would benefit them in the long run. Any superficial study of revolutions throughout history will show that revolutions happen when there has been, well, food shortages, rising prices, when basically the poor suffer. Because although most people don't really care about matters of principle, when they realise that they're not getting the basics of life, when their energy costs soar, when their food prices soar, they will become angry and resentful, and they're not just going to forget about it. And when that happens, they will attack the ruling classes. So what the government is doing by sending more money to, well, spending more money on defence, it's not defence, it's aggression, isn't it? It really makes no sense to have another European war, because if you were European, you'd want, well, good relations with Russia to continue getting your cheap energy. And if you're an environmentalist, you wouldn't want a nuclear war, because that would be enormously damaging for the environment. So it makes no sense, even according to the new religion of intersectionality and environmentalism. It makes no sense at all. But fundamentally, the problem is that of the official handbook of your chosen moral system. What is our chosen moral system? Did any of us choose it in our much vaunted democracy? Did any of us choose the moral system of woke and intersectionality? And the answer is that no, we didn't. We never were asked. And today I saw a video of the National Justice Party. The secretary of it, Warren Balloch, I think is how he pronounced his last name, made a rousing speech blaming Jews. And fundamentally, that's another display of a lack of understanding of status in politics and in society. Of course, we have now got to the stage where the many are angry with the few, the elite. And the National Justice Party believes that there are enough angry white people to defeat the very unpopular elite who presume to run America. But it's a bit touch and go. Unless you have a strong narrative, you won't be able to change the minds of enough people. I have a strong narrative, because what I do is explain your history and your problems to you. I diagnose the disease, I attribute the problem to a systemic failure of your moral system to regulate the morals of your leaders. But I suppose this is too abstract for low education, low status, low information people who don't respond to abstract reasoning because they are uneducated. And sadly, their leaders, or the people above them who know what I'm saying, dare not explain what I'm saying to them. They dare not platform me for fear of alienating and upsetting their low information, low education, low status supporters. But it is important for people to understand the nature of the problem, and it is actually quite easy for me to explain what the problem is, and that is that your moral and political system is broken down. Why does this matter? I know most of you don't believe in God, so you don't care that Christianity is kaput, and you're not liberal, so you don't care that liberalism is kaput and for losers. But you need to replace it. You need to replace Christianity and liberalism with something better, or there will be no movement. Nobody will lift a finger to help you get what you want if you don't have a compelling narrative to diagnose a problem and prescribe the cure. And in the end, it is a matter of morality, and morality means having a moral system, and you need to replace your broken and failed moral system with a better one. And I have exactly the thing. But since many YouTubers and public intellectuals who have heard of me won't engage with me, therein lies my problem. Why won't they engage with me? It's because they are cowards and hypocrites and corrupt, because you are already corrupt if you deny the truth and ignore it. You don't have to take bribes, you don't have to perform acts of hypocrisy. You just have to ignore the truth or deny it. And that's why nothing will happen. The switch that would work would be people doing the right thing and asking the next logical question, assuming you have understood what I have been trying to tell you. I hope that there will be a question in the chat that indicates understanding and intelligence. But nothing in the chat suggests intelligent life. Ralph says I'm lying, but he won't be able to say what the lies are. He just won't. Christine doesn't get it, but then she's not very intelligent. She only follows the crowd. She doesn't understand abstract ideas. But you would have thought that the men might rise to the occasion, but not really. To be Christian is really to be corrupt, because you are really saying, I'm going to pretend to believe that Jesus is God, even though I don't believe in it, because I want to be a member of that gang. But that gang is, well, why do you want to be a member of that gang? It confers no honour. You're only joining a group of people who are believed to be idolaters and blasphemers. Why would you want to do a thing like that if you believe in God? It makes no sense. But then Most men are neurotic. And I think Ralph has caught the neurosis of Western man because he wants to identify himself so much with them that he thinks identifying himself as Christian, even though he doesn't believe it, will give him privileges and honour. But nobody trusts him. He only attracts intellectual mediocrities, and he's still kept out of the groups that he so longs to join. They don't want anything to do with him because fundamentally they don't trust him. They don't trust him because he has nothing to offer them but his ideas that get nowhere and make no sense. So Joe has appeared. He is gratifying in that he goes through my streams quite carefully to the extent of quoting them and typing them out. So that is gratifying. And he at least is paying attention, and he's obviously been to university, he's read a few books of philosophy, but it hasn't really helped him because he has nothing to offer. I mean, so what if he's read Nietzsche a few times? He really has no solutions other than a blind and angry resistance to religion. He thinks his atheism is supreme. I'm quite happy to let Ralph entertain the hoi polloi. I do occasionally dip into his streams, but they're just full of angry people waiting to spurg. There's very little wisdom in them. It's all a repetition of LARPers stating their position, and these LARPers would be Christian and they would be anonymous and they have nothing to offer. But I have a solution that is so terrifying that many people won't talk about it. I wonder if Ralph has approached the boys at the traditional Britain group. I imagine they would be more his type than patriotic and alternative and people like that. Perhaps they won't want anything to do with him either. I've met most of them, and I know they don't want me there. They don't want me at their meetings. They don't want me asking questions because they know what I'm offering, and they don't want it. But at least they know what it is I'm offering, eh? Not only do they not want what I'm offering, they haven't got anything better. That is what kills them. That's what makes them flee from me. So after over a decade, my solution is still the solution that no one will discuss. So let us return to the subject of the Hasmonean Dynasty. It is to do with separation of powers. So we know that Christianity, that supported the divine right of kings, had to rely on a priesthood. The priesthood of the Catholic Church, no less. Previously, I suppose, they relied on a pantheon of Britannic gods, I suppose, Celtic gods, whatever they were, or even Viking gods. I'm a bit vague about, the pantheon that the ancient Britons worshipped. But I guess, they had druids or something like that, and the druids would know something about maps and astronomy, and, predict the summer and winter solstice, and, maybe doctors too, I imagine, if any of you have read Asterix, the comics of Asterix. But anyway, there was a kind of priesthood, and I think the Romans, exterminated them when they conquered Britain and the rest of Europe. So, basically, the Catholic Church took over. The Catholic Church made a corrupt bargain with the king, saying, "We will support your divine right to rule better than your previous priesthoods." And the European monarchs accepted the bargain until they got fed up with being bossed around by the Pope and decided to be their own Pope, thereby committing the same error that the Hasmoneans did. So, we know that the Bible stipulates in Genesis 49:10 that the kingship should always rest in the tribe of Yehuda, descendants of Jacob's son Judah, as it did once David's line was established. It was to be separated from the priesthood, which came out of the tribe of Levi, from which Aaron descended, Numbers 3:6-9, to balance the secular and the spiritual. The Hasmoneans, though Kohanim of the tribe of Levi, were not in line for the high priesthood or for political leadership, which they usurped. What began in glory ended in ignominy. The 9 Hasmonean rulers, to be recognized by the Roman Senate, engaged in the same political intrigues, self-aggrandizement, and bloodshed as the previous regime. When 2 brothers who were not eligible claimed the kingship, they called on a representative of Rome to arbitrate. Foolishly repeating the mistake of the Hellenized Jews, the contending brothers opened the door to the Roman conquest, which ended their rule. When Herod killed the last of them, after just 103 years, and entered Jewish sovereignty in Israel for almost 2,000 years. So, when Henry became his own pope, well, we know he didn't exactly say, I'm my own pope. He appointed an Archbishop of Canterbury who knew how to treat him and not boss him around and tell him things he didn't want to hear. So, right from the beginning, the Church of England was created with the express purpose of being a creature of the state. So obviously the church would be whatever the state wanted it to be. If it wanted, it would have to follow Henry's orders or else. And we know that after the English Reformation, the absolute power of the monarch was diluted, little by little, until we have got to where we are now, where to be monarch is really to not enjoy any freedom of belief at all, because You can imagine what would happen if the Queen said, well, I'm going to be Muslim now. She would be forced to abdicate, and if any monarch had any other religion than Anglicanism, that would be the end of him or her. So what would be, what is the point of being monarch? You're supposed to enjoy more rights than your subjects, but if you enjoy fewer rights and are less powerful than your subjects, and when having sex with a 17-year-old, which is perfectly legal in the UK, is treated as something that's going to cost you millions of pounds, then you know that it's not a status that is in any way attractive. They have no privacy, they have no right to state their political views. It would be torture to be a member of the royal family, as far as I'm concerned. Aaron's turned up. I don't... why does it say 2 viewers when, in fact, there are more? Right, you can tell from the chat that there's more. So, obviously, I'm being suppressed. And I regard it as a compliment to be worthy of suppression. So, really, I'm talking to Jews and Gentiles who don't understand their history and won't be told, I suppose, because they are crippled intellectually and morally by their Islamophobia. But anyway, the long and short of it is that for people who fight over their identity but don't understand their own history and don't understand their own place in the world, well, there's not going to be much of a future for people like that. And if they can't understand the problem because they prefer not to. You see, with people like Aaron, we know he's confused and angry and full of hatred for Islam, but he wants to be Jewish, but he knows he's not. And he doesn't get his religion, and well, he's a low-status Jew, he's a mamzer, and so is Duvet, and he's a liberal, and, we just get all these mixed-up Jewish, Gentile, parentage people, and they don't really know what's going on. What about the real Jews? Are the real Jews, the Orthodox Jews, well, they don't have the courage of their convictions. They can't put 2 and 2 together because it makes a frightening number of 4, and they can't cope with that. They can't cope with the fact that for centuries they haven't been doing what they were made God's chosen people to do. And the Muslims don't get off lightly either. And so they all pretend not to get it because they think they can ignore me and forget about me and pretend not to understand what I'm saying. But I'm the one who has the key to the solution to their problems, which They dare not think, they dare not say, they dare not do. And it is ironic, really, that these people who claim to believe in God actually lack the conviction to do what it is that they're supposed to do. Which means that they are in fact atheists, but pretending to believe in God. These Jews, these Christians, these Muslims who lack courage to say what I say, think what I think, or even challenge me because they don't want to be seen to be associated with me. The people who post most copiously are cowards like Joe, who will soon delete his comments, and Ralph will soon change his username, his channel, to another in order not to be spotted. I have the constancy of the Northern Star, I think. And these nationalists, these white nationalists, they don't get it either. Nobody cares about angry white men who are too stupid to work out what the problem really is. Particularly if their religion, their unofficial, their quasi-religion is about hatred of Jews and the blaming of Jews. Which, interestingly, is, well, a terrible crime if you believe in God, and even if you don't. Because the moment you show hatred of Jews, you're going to be labelled Nazi, and the shutters will come down and nobody will listen to anything you say. And if you're supposed to believe in God, then you just have to accept that, Jews are his chosen people. And you're not in a position to question the wisdom of God. I mean, I have a pretty good idea why he did it. But because there are no qualified theologians or intelligent people capable of engaging with me on the subject, the point doesn't get made. And the terrible shame of it is that these people who claim to be nationalists, whose moral system is supposed to be nationalism, they're not able to engage either, because they are cowards and corrupt hypocrites who lack the intellectual competence to engage in a conversation that would lead inevitably to agreeing that my solution is the biggest and best solution that you're ever going to get. Alright, I think I've said enough. I've repeated my points enough. I don't know if the morons and vegetables can get it. No, I didn't fast for Ramadan. I'm not Muslim. Alright, I'm off. Thank you all for coming by. Perhaps one day my wisdom